Okay, guys, let's get started with this seminar. So, my name is Thomas Grund. I'm a professor at the Institute of Sociology. I guess most of you have already seen me. Has anybody not seen me yet? Over the last semester or this semester? You all know me. I'm asking this question because I don't know you guys. That's the problem. Last semester, I had all those empty faces all over Zoom, and I have no idea who the hell you are. I would love to know who you are. So that's why I can't really make the connection. But am I right to assume that you guys all know me? Yep. Great. Well, as you can already tell, I'm kind of speaking English to you today. So the whole seminar will be done in English. But don't worry about that, it's absolutely fine. Well, you know me, I speak German as well, obviously. Even though I taught mostly English in my life, so actually teaching in German these days, it's actually an interesting challenge for me. I've never done that before. I only taught once in German, that was in Switzerland, and there it was like a really weird accent, But anyway, so this whole thing is in English. But I assume you guys are all now higher up as well. I kind of checked which semester you are. And you're not at the introduction lectures anymore. You're moving on. And that means you have to start reading text in English. That's just how it is. That's just what you have to do in the academic world if you want to be successful at the end of the day. We will have the content that I will provide will be in English. And we will have discussions in English as well. But I don't want you guys to feel left out. So I don't know, if you really can't handle that, just throw in a German sentence in there or something. We'll all manage, it's all fine. I understand German. I can even talk to you in a Badish accent if you want. But we try this in English first. Right? So kind of take this as a chance, but also as a great opportunity to first of all practice your English a little bit. But again, no worries. You don't need to have done an English license course or anything else like that in school. It's completely fine. Don't worry. Don't worry. It's all very straightforward. You know me. I try to present things in a simple way. So even if it's not the most complicated thing, I try to present it to you in a simple way. That's what we do. And you'll get better in it. So it is an opportunity for you to improve. First of all, now here, but also in your writing, if you want. I encourage you to also kind of, at the end of the day, you'll have a written assignment. And I encourage you to do that in English if you want. I won't grade you as harshly if you do it in English. I don't really care that much about that part. I care more about the language. Right? So I don't know. That's what I focus on. And I focus more on the argument that you make, less on the language. That's what I do. But if that is a huge obstacle, feel free to also submit it in German. But I encourage you to do it in English. Okay. Well, this bloody bugger stays with us for quite a while. I don't know how you feel about it. Like it's kind of weird. I have mixed feelings. On the one side, I kind of really enjoy being back in class. Seeing you guys. It's horrible to sit at home. I don't know. At first, it's nice, but after a while, it becomes a bit of a stressor. And so I'm happy to be back here. At the same time, I am a little worried about what's going on, over the next few weeks and months. And, COVID is picking up again. You see me actually now wearing a mask. Why am I doing that? Because I checked this room before, and bloody room, there's no way of opening that window over there. I kind of was in touch with the building, and also, I really tried. I've been told, well, it's a known problem, but maybe we find a solution in a few years. So that's why you see me wearing a mask over here. And you've seen this video from me before, maybe, if you are in my methods class, so let me just play that again. It's a message from the university.
Wir tragen weiter Maske.
Wir tragen weiter Maske.
Wir tragen weiter Maske.
Wir nehmen Rücksicht, auch im Hörsaal. Wir tragen weiter Maske.
We are still wearing our masks to protect others, to stay healthy and safe.
Wir tragen weiter Maske, auch im Hochschulsport.
Wir tragen weiter Maske.
Wir tragen weiter Maske.
Wir tragen weiter Maske. Eine angemessene und coole Antwort auf ein immer noch unsicheres Infektionsgeschehen.
Okay, So there you go. So I cannot force you guys, but I would appreciate if you wear a mask in this class. Simply because it's a very small room. It's different from a lecture theater. We can't go the distance that we have otherwise. So we won't see each other that often in person, and let's give it a try. Let's see how far we go. I know it's not easy. God, I wear glasses normally myself, so I have the choice these days between wearing a mask and seeing something. So because it just doesn't work together. But I would appreciate it. Okay, so let me summarize the obvious. Like if you guys are sick, or if you feel you have symptoms, or even if you just have symptoms, you don't need to have like a positive test. Just don't bother. You will. You won't be punished. There are ways. I'll talk about the mode of this module in a second. There will be lots of videos that you can watch from home and do the readings and do the work there in a while. I just think of you and the others. Just that we get through the semester somehow. That we get back to some normality in a way. Anyway, so well, you guys know me already. It's kind of I just realized. Well, recently, sometimes I just assume that you guys are different students in different courses because I haven't seen you before, right? So I don't really know. But now I'm realizing I keep talking the same stuff. Probably I need to be mindful of the jokes that I crack because they're everywhere. They're the same, and you guys are wondering what is up with this guy. So, but let me repeat it anyway because I'm still new at RWTH. I kind of came here just half a year ago. You saw me in the Methoden 1 und 2 or in the Datenanalyse 1 und 2. And later on, the seminar style where we're here right now, I teach social networks mostly, and that's like my research focus, but also this analytical sociology, so I'm quite excited about this one. This is sort of like an area where I've done quite a bit of stuff before. And research-wise, like mostly social network analysis, but also computational social science, analytical sociology, empirical social science research. Maybe at the end of this module or this course, you'll get an idea about the kind of stuff that I find interesting. Because this is literally like a seminar where one day, a few years ago, I sat down and I thought, what are the kind of things that I find really cool? Let's make a module out of that, right? Let's make a course out of that. And that's what I did, because there wasn't anything out there. And so this is literally, you could call it analytical sociology, but you can also call it stuff that Thomas Grund finds cool. So here are my contact details. You're always free to send me an email if you want. Usually I'm in my office quite a bit as well. But if you want to make an appointment for the office hours, send me an email before, because then I can make a reservation for you, and then I want to take my time, and we can pencil that in the schedule. If you have any other problems, in terms of registration, or I don't know, there's all sorts of stuff and those kind of things, please contact my secretary. First of all, I don't really know about these things anyway, and secondly, it's just a help if I don't have to deal with these administrative things. It means like I have more time to focus on you. Okay. So seminars. A seminar is an interesting form of teaching. Like I used to think, God, the way these seminars are done in Germany, it's kind of weird. Like you come to the first session and then everybody gets a topic in a way, and then you go off, you bugger off, you do your readings, and then from week over week somebody gives a talk, and that's about it. And then I remember when I was a student, I focused on the stuff that I had to do. Like my slot was in 4 weeks times or 6 weeks times, and I couldn't be bothered about the other stuff. And well, maybe I could, so I went there and I really tried to listen, but it was just so much that I had to do on my side in a way that I didn't have the capacity to kind of really read all the books and all the other stuff that the other people presented there. So to be honest, I studied in Germany for a few years before I ventured abroad, and out of those seminars, I didn't really take anything out of it. I don't know. So you sit there, somebody gives a talk, you have no idea what the person talks about. Sometimes it's complicated, you just fall asleep. What's the point, right? So let's do this differently. So you will be much more involved in this when we meet, right? We won't meet all the time. I'll talk about that. I don't know if you checked out Moodle before. There's some information about that already. But when we meet, you guys will be much more involved, right? So there will be group work. There will be all sorts of discussions. There will be all sorts of other things that we do together in a way. So be prepared for that. But also be open for that. To be honest, it's kind of fun. I don't know. I'm not doing anything to annoy you or something, right? You won't be graded on that either, right? I don't know. You will be graded at the end of the day from handing in a written assignment. That's the kind of thing, you know, that I will assess. And the group work is a great opportunity to get to that, to strengthen your sociological thinking. You know, that's what you do, to have a good time with fellow students in a way, and really make the most out of this place, or this university. So we will have live sessions and non-live sessions. Talk about that in a second. In those live sessions, we've really flipped it around. It's even called flipped classroom. You know, it's like a concept around that. It's also called experiential learning, meaning you guys have to experience doing certain things, right? So these are all kind of components that come in. Don't be afraid. There's nothing too crazy about it. Just be prepared and have an open mindset when you show up for those live sessions, that we kind of engage with each other. And sometimes it's easier done in smaller groups. For example, last semester I had a fantastic master seminar. It was great. I love it. You know, when we kind of throw balls at each other, we kind of like, I don't have an ideas, and the other person has an idea, and then we kind of go on it. That's how, in my opinion, it should be. That's where you get the most out of it. But I'm also conscious that you guys are undergraduate students, so you might not be used to that. Maybe you're afraid. I don't know, you don't have to. You know, this is like an open space where you kind of can exchange ideas. It is a bit of a larger group. I was a little worried about that. We had quite a few registrations, but looking at you guys right now, it seems to be okay. We can handle that. You know, we can manage that. But don't be afraid to get involved. If you don't, I will make you get involved. You know, but always mean it in a nice way. So how does this work? So it's very similar. If you've been to my other modules, you know, like I'm a strong believer in kind of working regularly on certain things. And this is where this seminar is also different. It's not that, you know, somebody gives a presentation and that's about it, which is, by the way, really difficult to do with 30 people. How the fuck do you do that? You know, you have like 3 people, 4 people giving presentations together, and that's about it. What do you take out of it? I don't know. How should I assess it? I don't know. Doesn't make sense in my opinion. So we do this the other way around. We'll have, I think we have 11 topics, substantive topics that we go through over the course. 11 things of stuff that Thomas Grund finds cool, and for each one, I kind of selected one required reading for you guys. One required reading. It's all on Moodle. You find it all on Moodle. I don't know if you already checked that out, but you really have to read that one required reading. You do that from week to week. There's a plan of when you're supposed to do that in a way. It's not too much. You know, I always try to find a reading that is comprehensible, that is not too complicated, that doesn't put you off, that is not too big or too small in a way. I really try to put these things together. But don't be put off if you don't understand something. You know? Don't be put off. Sometimes it's just how it is. There's a method being applied in there, a statistical procedure that you guys don't know. Usually it's a text that you would still understand. Right? That's how I selected them. So try to focus on the main message and try to understand as much of the other stuff as you can. But if you do that and you don't, and you come to class, we talk about it, and you say, Thomas, I didn't understand this, it's absolutely fine. That's what I want. I want you to engage in that kind of stuff in the readings, right? So it's readings that are indicated on Moodle as required readings. Then for each week, I also have like further readings. And like stuff if you want to go beyond that, you know. And if you kind of decide on, hey, this is an area where I want to write my assignment on, my Hausarbeit, which is what you have to do at the end of the day, that's a great starting point. So there you can then delve into that, read that. You can then try to find some more literature on a topic and so on, but that is there for you. Also, if you're just very interested in it, you know, maybe chances are you find something cool as well. Okay, so I already mentioned, and it's already on Moodle outlined, that this class that we have live sessions and non-live sessions. It's kind of trying to find the best of both worlds in a way, because I don't think everything was bad over the last. We learned a lot about what works, you know, what doesn't work. So there's no reason to change everything back to the old ways how we did things. So in this course right now, I tried a combination between live sessions and non-live sessions, and partly I do that because that also means I can use the live sessions in a much more efficient, better way. I want to have a live session as an informed way, you know, where we kind of build on something that we all engaged with. Because then the quality of the discussion and the quality of the stuff that you do is usually much higher. So you kind of get more out of it. Don't worry, these dates are all on Moodle. You're on Moodle, you have like really, I made it simple for you. You just follow through. There's the dates on it and everything, you know what? So you see which dates are live and which ones are non-live sessions. So today, for example, we are in week 1. This is where we are. This is a live session. So for the next 3 weeks, there are non-live sessions. We meet again in person in week 5. Okay, so now what happens in between? So what happens in these non-live sessions? Well, basically, I will release videos. I thought about releasing them every week, but actually now this morning I thought, why not? I already released the first 3 weeks. So you have them already on Moodle. And the other ones, maybe that's how I do them, always before. Once the live session has passed, then I release the blog for the next 2 or 3 non-live sessions. That's sort of how I might do that. I almost have all videos already ready, except for one. I still need to produce that. It's actually quite a lot of work to do this kind of stuff. But also, I don't want you to be overwhelmed. Right? So follow the schedule that I give you. That kind of is probably the best way of being successful at this and taking something out of it. But maybe one topic really interests you. So that's why I don't want to take that opportunity away from you to get engaged with it before already. So what I might do, instead of releasing a video every Thursday, which is what I originally thought, maybe releasing them on blog, the first 3 weeks, basically until week 5, they're already released. They're on Moodle. Okay, so these are the non-live sessions, right? So you read that stuff, and actually the best learning outcome, that's why I originally thought about this releasing stuff on the Thursday at 4 p.m. The best learning outcome is if you first read the paper. First read the required article, the required reading, and then you watch the video, where oftentimes I talk about that article as well, right? Because then you set the foundation, maybe you didn't understand everything, then you see me doing something funky with it in a way, and then you think, oh yeah, now it makes sense, and then you come to the class and we discuss about it and do some group work on it, and then you get the most out of it, right? So that's sort of how it builds on the top of each other. So do the reading first, even if you don't understand it completely, then watch the video. And maybe then some things become clearer, and then we come into the live sessions. So what do we do during these live sessions? Well, I already said, I really want you guys to be involved, and you don't need to be afraid at all. There's nothing harmful at all. There's nothing concerning your grade at all. Actually, what I want to do, I want to get you guys inspired. I want to get you guys to be interested, and usually there's a high chance you are, because you are here, right? So first of all, you selected into this university, in this study program. And secondly, you selected somehow in my course. I don't know, so what can I take out of that? So I can take out of that either you just have no clue at all, you just make a random choice, or you're somehow interested in what's going on over here, right? So I take the random walk as well, but chances are you're interested in it, and hopefully I can get you interested in that. And then we kind of apply things in these groups. I have a couple of different group things in mind that we'll do, so it will be a variety of things. I haven't planned everything through yet on these kind of things, because you also need to take it a little bit, I don't know, I also need to see how you guys deal with things, how you react on things, or what is feasible for you guys, what works for you. I could have the best idea. If it doesn't work for you, it's useless. So I always need to think about that. I need to think about my audience. So we'll do all sorts of interactive group work. And for that to work, you need to have watched the released videos before, and you need to have read the required readings in advance. I won't do any tests or anything like that, but I will assume that you know that, right? And I might encourage you to really interact. So if you just sit there and nobody says, don't be afraid, I might pick you out. I might kind of say, what do you think? Working groups together or something. I really want to tickle you guys to get going. This is a very safe space, it's an absolutely safe space. There's no worries about that. There's nothing on your grade in it. I really just want you guys to be excited and interested in this. Okay, but nevertheless, at the end of the day, I do have to assess you in some ways. And then there's this RWTH peculiarity that I'm still kind of struggling with a little bit. There are all sorts of ways of how things get assessed. Some people get a graded assessment, others get an ungraded, benoteter Schein, unbenoteter Schein, these kind of things. So I'll talk about that in a second now when I walk you through Moodle, because I already outlined the details for it over there as well. But before I do that, has anybody checked out the Moodle page already? Yeah, one person? Come on, guys, that's exactly what I mean. Hand up. Yeah. Okay, nobody checked it out. That's sad. So please do that. There's all sorts of information on Moodle that is relevant for you. Let me show you. I use Moodle a lot. Yeah. So not just for distributing information, but also all sorts of background. And actually, this will be part of this whole class right now. You know, it's like this mixed teaching where we have some live sessions, we have non-live sessions. I don't know, in your free time, check out the description and the learning outcomes. Check out the mode delivery if you have any questions, language, and so on. And I talk about required readings and so on. And when you go down, you know, that's what I meant by having made it easy for you, hopefully. There you see today it's a live session, introduction and overview. There you go. Next week it's going to be, whenever there's a video, it's a non-live session. It's a non-live session. So I still put the date in there, you know, because you literally can watch that stuff during this time slot. So it works for you. You have that time reserved in your schedule, in your weekly schedule. And until then, you need to have the required readings, which is here, highlighted in red. There's a further reading. I have both required and further readings here as PDFs for you. Yeah. And usually you also get some cues from me here, which is sort of related to the text a little bit. What I think, what the main message here is, or what is kind of interesting, why I kind of put those readings in them. And then you see there are these videos, so here I already released them. So for the first week, there are 2 videos. And these videos are usually very short. This is like 20 minutes max, or something like that, because I think for online teaching, this is as much as we can take. I don't know if you are like me after that, I just fall asleep. So I kind of cut it down in small, digestible pieces in a way, and that's your job then to watch those videos. And then for the next week, you know, this is the same kind of spiel. There we have ecological fallacy and micro-macro links. Here you have 2 required readings. I put 2 in there because this reading is just really short. You know, it's just 6 pages or something, I don't know. It's not a lot, really, don't worry about it. Here are the readings, there are the videos for you to watch. Okay? And there we go, and then we have like the 4th week, the wisdom of the crowd, which is very interesting as well. So probably we'll do something about that in the group session, also because I'm curious about it. The readings, and then on the 10th of November, that is week 5, as I said earlier, we have the next live session like today. Okay, and then it's just goes on that, and you know, and I don't know. This is now my view, so I haven't released those videos yet. But as one topic where I haven't made the videos yet, so I'm still working on this. And let's see, maybe then I release it as well. Okay, so let me talk next about the assessment. Can you read, or should I make it bigger? Bigger? Okay, let me see. How do I do that? Okay, hopefully that makes it a little better. But let me also walk you through it. So let me just do a quick survey. Who wants to do a benotete Leistung and who wants to do an unbenotete Leistung? The first one, benotete Leistung. You don't know? Yeah, okay. So then just put your hands up on both. And potentially unbenotete Leistung? Let's just see how it goes. Yeah? Let's see how tough this actually is. Yeah? Let's see how you can get away with it. Well, to be honest, you don't have to do anything different. The only thing that is the difference at the end of the day is that for the benotete Leistung, I don't know, I follow the academic regulations. You guys have to write a Hausarbeit, schriftliche Hausarbeit. And here we go. So these are not numbers that I came up with. To be honest, I'm not a huge fan of these numbers. For me, it's more important what you write, not how much you write. Yeah? You can go beyond that, I won't punish you. You can go below that, I won't punish you, as long as you write something good. Okay, what is the expectation here? What about the word count? But don't take it too serious, as you know my opinion about it. Feel free to discuss your topic and strategy for this written assignment with me in advance. You know, you have my details. Get in touch with you if this is something that you think could help you. The expectation is that you find and go beyond the literature that I give you in the syllabus. So in the syllabus, I give you the required reading and sometimes one further reading. For Hausarbeit, you need to go beyond that. So in this case, this is not an introductory session anymore. I change my teaching depending on who my audience is. So here I assume you guys are higher up, and so I assume and I expect that you guys know how to find literature? Did you do that? Did you find that? I expect that you guys know how to write a Hausarbeit. Okay, so you go beyond the syllabus. For each topic, I also added some cues. This could be just helpful for you. You don't have to. You can also ignore it. But sometimes it helps you to understand a little bit why the hell did Thomas put that reading over there. You can use these cues as a starting point for your written work. But I deliberately leave this open so you can also take other directions if you like. Right? And what could these other directions be? Well, you could, for example, write the Hausarbeit in the form of a research proposal or even a small empirical study. Don't overdo it. You have other things to do as well, right? But at the same time, I want to give you this space if this is something that really excites you and that you really want to do. I much more care about that you do something exciting than about doing something very particular, specific. Or something that excites you, because usually then it becomes better as well. But again, that is not expected, like, I don't know, be careful about that. And if you want to venture off, get in touch with me, because maybe sometimes it's difficult to assess that yourself. And you need to protect yourself from yourself as well. The deadline for all of that, it's a month after the end of the semester, so I put the 2nd of March on there. This is when you submit it. It all happens via Moodle. There will be a submission box somewhere where you submit your written work. And as I said, I encourage you to write your Hausarbeit in English, but I will also accept work in German. That's not the deal. But it is an opportunity. Don't be put off by the language, but at the same time, it could be maybe something that you find exciting. I don't know. I won't be as harsh in grading it if your English has some, I don't know, some mistakes or you have some errors in there. Don't be worried about that. Like in everything, I care mostly about what you do, not in necessarily how you do it. Okay, and then I try to do it over the March month, and on my birthday, pretty much, I'll give you your grades. The second thing is like the unbenotete Leistung. I'm always kind of thinking, what do I do over here? What do I expect from you here, if you want to do that? Well, first of all, be here. Participate during the live sessions. We don't have that many live sessions. We just have a handful of those. You do everything else as well. Watch the videos. You read the required papers. You do everything the same. You show up here. You participate in the group discussions and the group work that we do. It's all the same. But then you also have to submit something else. And here you have to submit what is called a response paper. Response paper is something that I used to use as a form of assessment at other universities a lot. And I think it's a great form of assessment because it's not like a Hausarbeit. In my opinion, a Hausarbeit is sometimes far too big. It's like this huge kind of thing, and you get bogged down and you kind of, I don't know, get overwhelmed with it. While the main point gets lost. I've read Hausarbeiten and there is no main point. And I wonder, I don't know, you should have worked on the main points instead of trying to write your 10,000 words or whatever you've been required to do by the academic regulations. So here it is about your response. I want you to choose one of your topics, the same thing like with the Hausarbeit. You choose one of the topics, you don't get it assigned, you choose whatever you like, right? And you work on it. And for the response paper, the same spiel, you choose one of the topics and you write a response paper. Response paper is 500 to 1,000 words. It's not that much, maybe 2-3 pages or something like that, It's not that much. And a response paper it's not just a summary. Oftentimes people think this is a summary of the paper. And then they go and say the first article says this, the other article this, or this book chapter says that. That's not a good response paper. A good response paper is sort of something where you often don't think too much about it either. It's about what is your initial reaction when you read those papers. What are the ideas that come to your mind? What don't you understand about it? What are the things that you see where they connect and speak with each other in a way? And if you kind of bring that out in the form of an argument, that is the best. The best response paper, like any other written work as well, with the Hausarbeit as well, I don't know, I hope people taught you how to write a Hausarbeit, really has a statement. There's like a thesis statement, a research statement, like a point that you want to make. What is the point? Always think about, why should I bother to read that stuff? Well, I do it because I get paid, but to be honest, why would other people do it? You need to have a point. And that point sometimes is just one sentence. It's a bit like Grund 2022, what did I say, right? That's the citation. That's sort of like one sentence. And I say, well, I don't know, networks matter for how we perceive the world, right? That would be a statement. And then you kind of develop that statement. Then you jump in, you go, have your introduction, you have your thesis statement, you go into the main body of the things, and then you have the different kind of points in a very structured way where you develop this thesis statement that you have at the top. But maybe, I don't know, if you're interested in that, I can talk a little more about it as well. I often like to talk about that, which is why I included it in the Methoden syllabus as well, because I'm not sure if you guys actually know how this works. But it makes a huge difference because it's something that you can actually learn. It's really something you can learn. You can kind of follow this script, and at the end, I promise you, your writing will be much, much better. Because I always get, I don't know, the easiest way to make me, I don't like to give bad grades, you know, even though I'm a tough cookie sometimes, so I don't know. But I'm also a nice cookie sometimes, especially when you have a point and when I can see a structure. Okay, so that's actually also because I'm aware that maybe this format of a response paper is something new to you. Or has anybody of you ever heard of a response paper before? Not really. Nobody told you about these kind of things. Okay, so there are sort of two documents. One is actually in German from folks in Konstanz in politics. They're really good, but they're also very international. You know, they play the international game. Well, that's what we try to do over here. I don't know. Maybe that's why they got me over here. But you read through it, what it does. You know, like what is the point of a response paper? How do you set it up? What do you do? What do you not do? There's one document which I think is very useful. There's another one from Duke University about, you know, the definition of the genre. What is the response paper? How do you approach it? You know, like, I don't know. Consider those texts individually, consider those texts collectively, how do they speak with each other, and what kind of actions that you do. That's also why you get those cues from me. You know, these cues can always really help you to kind of develop that argument in a way that you think. And in these arguments, it's kind of, I don't know, I can see how this can be difficult as a student, because in a way, but at the same time, I'm always bothered by it, because you come to the university and we kind of teach you about how things are, you know, and you forget about what you think about it yourself. And I think that's wrong. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I spend so much time, or I had to spend so much time in kind of retraining students to think by themselves by the time they come to the end of their bachelor's degree or their master's degree, and to make their own argument. Well, in fact, they already had that long time before they even heard about all this sociological stuff, because that's stuff that they were interested in the first instance. To give you an example, I remember, well, there are a couple of different stories about how I became a sociologist, and I think one is a little weirder than the other. And because I originally studied computer science. I got a degree in computer science, business as well. And I was sitting in these classes, and I thought, what the hell, you know? This is kind of weird stuff. I don't know, I find it boring in a way. So I started writing down, but I had all these ideas. I didn't really know what it was. It's just ideas about the world. Nobody taught me what sociology is. God, my parents still don't know what I do. Yeah, I don't know, what is it? But I also gave up explaining it to them, because I'm like, what is sociology? By the way, I have a video on that in a second, so let's see how that goes. But I was sitting there and I started writing down ideas in these little Moleskine books, and by now I have 15, 20 of those. You know, they're in my office, and they're all full with ideas. I had all sorts of ideas that I kind of started developing, and the very first one, ideas, I had no idea about sociology. And sometimes that's the best starting point to do sociology, because you're not blinded by the things that you see. You're not blinded by the stuff that you read, by the thoughts that you had about how things need to be done, or that this is sort of like how it goes. You're actually driven by how you see things, right? And when I do research, or oftentimes an advice that I give to my students is, when you work on a thesis, or when you work on a PhD or something, of course, you need to read stuff, right? You need to have the basis that you don't do something completely stupid. But then for a moment, you need to pretend that you didn't read it. And maybe that's an advice for these response papers as well. I don't read a certain way. Read it, and then pretend that you didn't read it. And then think about it. And then your brain is sort of fresh. You look at it in a different way. And this is sort of where oftentimes you get better ideas. Or this is where the really good stuff comes from. You can do mediocre stuff to take a small little step forward in I always call it the Dutch way of doing sociology, because those guys optimize that strategy. Great colleagues, they do amazing work, you know, like if you want to get some good universities in the Netherlands, they're really good in sociology. But they always are very, very incremental in a very small step. They hardly ever have a big idea. While the really good stuff, which comes from the US, which is published now in major journals, the American Journal of Sociology, the American Sociological Review, these are the top journals in the field where the best people publish. If I ever want to get a job, I think now it's too late, let's see, I don't know, I returned back to Germany, but if I would have wanted to get a job at a university like Harvard, Yale, or Princeton or somewhere like that, I should have published in those journals. That's what you need to do. That's sort of the ultimate aim. And these papers have a big idea. They have a big idea and then they develop them. And oftentimes that idea is maybe looking at something in a very different way that the field doesn't look at yet, right? And that is something that is incredibly challenging for students, it's incredibly challenging for colleagues, but even more so for you, because you think, oh, this is sort of how I need to do things. No, this is just the foundation. Use your brain to think about how things are and what you think about it and how one could look at it as well. And that's what I want in these response papers, in the ideal world. Right. Anyway, I don't know how I ended up there, talking about all sorts of things. Response papers, yeah, how you do that, what you put in there. So have the argument, maybe have an idea, have a statement, and then we have it from there. It's perfect timing because now it's time for questions.
Oh, okay, perfect. I was wondering, are there any other requirements for graded assessment, like an expose or something?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the graded assessment, it's the Hausarbeit at the end of the day. That's what it is.
Okay.
Any other questions? Where's the exit? How do I get out of here?
You talked about that we should put the final paper we write on Moodle. Do you also want it on a paper?
No. There is going to be a submission button on Moodle. This is where you put it on. Let's save some paper. Yeah.
So we have to do an ungraded test to prove that we were here. So
No.
for the Moodle code or
No.
Okay. So the ungraded tests are just.
There's no ungraded test. For the ungraded, I don't know, there's kind of different forms of getting proof of something, right? In a way, and a shine, something like that at the end of the day. And as far as I understand it, there are two versions of that. One is with a grade, and the other one is without a grade. For the one with a grade, you write the Hausarbeit, and for the other one, you write these response papers.
Okay.
In both, you participate in the class. I won't check. I won't take attendance. In a way, you guys are old enough. I don't know. If you don't want to be here, get out of here. I don't know. I don't care. I would love you to be here. I would love to convince you. So read a few papers, watch a few videos, and then we see if you want to be here. Any other questions? Oh, good. Well, let's see how this goes. You know, like, I don't know. See how this goes. So I brought a few more stuff where I talk a little bit about sociology, analytical sociology to begin with. You know, the first two videos will be about what is analytical sociology, but I might set you up on a little background for that as well. And the very first one is, God the hell, what even is sociology? What are you guys studying? Who's studying sociology and a bachelor? Oh no, everybody is doing GEWI. I think that's only connected to GEWI. Do you guys have sociology as your Schwerpunkt? Yeah. Do we have folks that do other things, other Schwerpunkt? What is your Schwerpunkt?
Political science.
Political science, okay. Okay, so you haven't done that much sociology, really, right?
No, but it's my second. We have to choose one Schwerpunkt and then.
I see, yeah. Well, you know, if you really want to create an awkward vibe with a sociologist, ask the guy what is sociology. It's really weird because it's also very different kind of stuff. So anyway, so here's my take on what sociology is. Have you ever wondered about who goes to university and why? Or what makes some people protest and march on the streets and others not? Why are poor people more affected by the coronavirus than rich people, even though the virus does not care about how much money you have? Why do some people like classical music, others hip hop, and some people like both? Why do you raise your hand in school but not at the dinner table? These are all questions related to society, and sociology is the scientific study of society and human behavior. It is about the big stuff like nations, countries, cultures, politics, or whole civilizations. But then it's also about the small stuff like single interactions that you have with friends, with family, or with loved ones. And how do all of these things affect whether you raise your hand or not? Society is essentially just a group of people who share a culture and a territory. And we are all part of society. Society is everywhere. And I really mean everywhere. Even when you're sitting in your room and when you listen to music or when you watch this video here right now, society is in the house that you are in the neighborhood that you're living in the family that you belong to, the music taste that you think that you acquired, all the ideas that you have about what to study. It's in the posters that hang in your wall, and it's in the TikTok moves that you try to perfect. All these things are products of society. And sociology is really broad, it is very broad, and it tries to understand the social world in different ways. What we are all trying to do is to look for patterns, for recurring events, and try to understand them in all sorts of places. For example, I do serious research about the interaction patterns of football players in the English Premier League. Others study who is dating whom. Others look at who commits crime or why do people litter more in neighborhoods where there's a lot of rubbish on the floor. Or why do people move from one country to another, and why is it that inequality seems to be getting bigger and not smaller? What we do as sociologists is we try to understand society, and we do that by seeing the general in the particular. We try to understand social behavior by placing it in its wider social context. For example, a sociologist looks not only just at the music that you like or the courses that you're interested in to study, but the sociologist puts that in relation to the social class background, your race, your gender, or age that you have. A sociologist might not necessarily be interested in a particular choice that you make. For example, whether or not to have kids? No. But rather a sociologist looks at why is it that people tend to have kids later in their lives than just a couple of decades or generations ago. And why is it that the average family size seems to decrease? The thing that we as sociologists mostly care about are big patterns and how these patterns affect our lives and what we do with our lives. And then also how individuals reproduce these patterns by doing what they do. But we also try to see the strange in the familiar. And that's easier said than done. It is about looking at things from a different angle, flipping things around. And by doing that, you see things in a fresh light, almost as if you would see it for the first time. A bit like if you would come from another planet. And when I asked you about why you raise your hand in school, but not at the dinner table, it's about that. The thing about society is that we are all part of it, even as researchers. So we need to force ourselves to look at the things that look normal to us. The stuff that we don't see anymore because we take it for granted, like having an internet connection, having the freedom to vote or say our opinion. Or why do I get a coffee when I go to a cafe and give somebody money, which is a piece of paper or plastic with no intrinsic value at all? Common sense is a good starting point for these things, knowing that you shouldn't poke your nose in a job interview, or that you should say hello when you meet somebody for the first time, or that you don't show up late for class. But the sociologist goes beyond that and asks, why do we all seem to know these things? And how did we agree on them? Sociology is also about seeing the things that stick out, the stuff that is different and somehow doesn't make sense with our understanding of the social world. For example, in sports, why is it that India hardly ever wins any medals at the Olympics? In fact, India won fewer medals at the Olympic Games than Ireland, even though it has 200 times the population of Ireland. Or why is it that there are so few Islamic terrorists with degrees in Islamic studies, but so many of them with degrees in engineering? And why is it that the books that get stolen most from the libraries are the books on theology? I'm not making this up. Common sense gets us through the world, but sociology tries to understand the world. And common sense has been pretty different not too long ago and changes more quickly than you think as well. It was common sense that slavery is right, or that women could not vote, that gays could not marry, or that smoking indoors is fine. These things were common sense in the same way as their opposite is now taken for granted. We are all part of society, and sociology studies that. Anyway, that's my take on sociology. In a nutshell, if you ever wondered what is this all about. Of course, there are different kind of readings of it. People focus on something else, but that's sort of what I find very interesting in sociology. I think it's a very creative area. You can be very creative. Like at least I get that sensation. It's sort of something that I like to do anyway. But you can really have out-of-the-box ideas, and that's often the good stuff. Right? So kind of don't shy away from that. Have that idea, and be curious about the world. That's mostly what it is. So coming back to the story, and I remember what I wanted to tell earlier about how I became a sociologist. So I kind of started to write down all these ideas in these Moleskine books. I had no idea what it was. And the very first point in the very first Moleskine book that I still have in my office was something like, it doesn't matter if something is true or not. As long as people believe in it, it's the same in the consequences for that person. And I thought I had this great idea. I kind of started to develop all sorts of other ideas following from it. I actually had no idea that I used deduction. Deduction is like kind of making a conclusion from stuff that you already know and kind of deducing from that. So I wrote down pages of stuff from that idea. I had no idea what I was doing. And then at some point I realized, yes, that is sociology. And I still thought, wow, I have a great idea. I can become a great sociologist. And then I realized somebody already had that idea 80 years ago. Right? That was a long time ago. Somebody already had that idea. It was a guy, I was a professor in Chicago, and the original quote is called, "If men define situations as real, they are real in their consequences." And it was a guy called William I. Thomas. So actually in the literature, you can Google it, you can Wikipedia it, it's called Thomas theory. So I thought, bloody hell, I'm 80 years too late, but at least the thing has the right name. And I thought, maybe that's something that I should do. Maybe I'm not the worst in it. So I became a sociologist. Anyway, there are a few other stories. I tell them at other occasions, maybe. So now what is analytical sociology? And where did I come in touch with that? Well, analytical sociology is, in order to understand that, is, well, you watch the videos, but sociology is very broad, so people have very different kind of ideas, meaning that sometimes you wonder what the hell are people doing, right? And it's like so many things in life. If you think that, chances are other people think like that as well. So I happened to also think about that, like what does sociology do? I was in this phase where between my master's, which I did at the University of Cambridge, and my PhD, which I did at the University of Oxford, I kind of was wondering, what the hell am I doing? I looked at social class and social stratification, looked at what people eat. It's still an important topic, sociology of consumption, sociology of food, but I was always joking that I'm doing the sociology of mashed potatoes, and that I'm kind of connecting it with 5 classes, whether somebody is in the upper class or the middle class, and whether they eat mashed potatoes or salad or I don't know. It was a little unsatisfying in a way, to say the least, because I thought other disciplines are better in that. A psychologist is better in explaining behavior like that. An economist is better in explaining behavior like that, individual behavior. What is my point? What is the reason for existing as a sociologist? What do we do? Where do we add something to the mix? And you know what? I found something. And that's why I do social network analysis. This is why I do analytical sociology and things like that. Because the whole is more than the sum of the parts. It's not just that you do something and somebody else does something. No, that's a difference. And that's a fundamental part of analytical sociology. That because one person does something, that affects other people, and you have this whole social dynamic that it unfolds, and sometimes, and that's where it becomes really fascinating, producing outcomes that maybe nobody individually wants. We'll have a topic about that, about social segregation, where nobody wants segregation. Segregation means like separating people according to race or ethnicity or whatever, or gender or something. We find it in the world. We do find it in the world. It's a sad world. We do find it out there, and we wonder, what's going on? Are people all racists? What's going on? But you know what? I will show you, that these kind of patterns can emerge even when everybody wants integration. Because one person does something which changes the situation for another person, which changes the situation for that person, which then affects somebody else doing something, and then you have these chain reactions. You have these cascades that kind of together, the individual behavior produces the macro level phenomena that we do observe. And once I came across that, I was very fast. I was hooked by that. Because I thought, first of all, this is something that no other discipline does. Kind of having that connection between from the micro to the macro through the social dynamics, about behavior changes the world for others, which then triggers them to do something, which then changes the world for others, and so on and so forth. That's something that no other discipline does. And then analytical sociology was, I didn't know about it. I kind of, I was a bit, not naive, I don't know, I'm just a curious guy. And so I was in Oxford, and I had started my original topic with some of the elite people in the world who study social stratification, but I was frustrated by it. I didn't like it, to be honest. I thought it's bollocks. So I kind of came across this other guy called Peter Hedström, who is a Swedish sociologist who was, at the time, a professor, well-known professor at Oxford. He became my supervisor, my friend. I'm still in touch with him. We're still close. We're writing a book together at the moment. And he became my supervisor during the PhD. And he kind of got me into that community a little bit because he gave me a convincing answer, which is analytical sociology, which is kind of thinking about how something comes about. So he has this point. He's this tall Swedish guy who's always like a little... And he was curious in how we explain things. So his first book, Dissecting the Social, was about how do we actually explain something. We'll talk about that too. How do we actually know something? How do we make an explanation? And one point that he made is we need to think about how something comes about. And you wonder, isn't that obvious? Well, no, actually it isn't. There's a whole discipline out there that doesn't think about that. The whole deductive nomological scheme. Have you heard about Hamilton Oppenheim before? Oh, you haven't had your methods class with me yet. Yeah. But you will hear about that. It's about how something happens and that kind of then something else happens. But it's a bit of a black box in between. We don't really know. And that's sort of where Peter suggested to think about the mechanism. How does something come about? How do we get from the one thing to the other? And once you start doing that, you very quickly start thinking about the social dynamics. And once you do that, you very quickly think about social networks, because these are the relations that matter for people to affecting other people, which then change the situation for other people to change the world, and so on and so forth. So very quickly, this is my spiel, this is my epistemological explanation for why I think social networks are very interesting. They're cool by itself anyway. I don't know, my research is on football networks in the Premier League. How cool is that? Anyway, but there's also another reason behind it. That we make an explanation and that we need to think about how things are related with each other. So anyway, so there's a couple of people. I was a PhD student, young and naive in Oxford, Nuffield College, the epicenter of quantitative social science in Europe, maybe even in the world. And Peter Hedström was there, who's the guy about analytical sociology who wrote the books. And he invited his buddies over, big shots in the field, small seminars, like 10 people. I remember I was there 15 years ago, and that's sort of when it just started. And ever since that, there are lots of publications that came out. One is actually from me as well. This one, I have something written in this one as well. And it turned into a big conference. Now in this 15th installment, now there are hundreds of people coming together who all think in a similar way. That we think about explaining something, being clear about the mechanisms, how we link things together. They have the macro and the micro, how that links together, the social dynamics, the networks, there are different components to it that hopefully will work out over the course of this semester. So anyway, now there's a big conference. I remember when it started. To be honest, actually I lost touch a little bit with that community because I ventured off doing other things. And but now I'm a little more in touch with them. That's the INAS International Conference. There's also the Institute for Analytical Sociology that I founded with Peter Hestrom at the time in Sweden as well. That was like, when was that, 2013? I was there for a few years and I ventured off, became a professor myself in Ireland. But they do great stuff. They have actually great, I might post a link to that as well. They have regular seminars where people kind of present real stuff, Here's about how networks bias academic communication online. I'm quite interested in that because this whole bias thing is something that fascinates me, about how being embedded in networks biases our perception of the world, and it does so in a dramatic way. So I don't know, I thought I'd post it over here. Maybe you guys are interested. These things are open, there's nothing preventing you guys from kind of signing into these academic talks. Maybe you don't understand anything, I don't know. Maybe you find it fascinating. So, but there's nothing stopping you from it. That's what I want to say. Just because you're an undergraduate student or a master's student or a PhD student, there's no reason why you can't do anything. There's no reason why you can't write a great term paper that will turn into an influential paper. Actually, some people did that. Mark Granovetter. Have you heard about Mark Granovetter? The strength of weak ties. Oh, we need to do some work. Big guy. It's like the 2 out of the 3 most cited journal articles in sociology have been written by Mark Granovetter. He's a sociology professor in Stanford. He's retired right now. You can look it up on Google Scholar. Why. One is like his embeddedness paper, and the other one is about the strength of weak ties, die Stärke der schwachen Beziehungen. He found out that, oftentimes it's those loose acquaintances that you have that really matter for getting you a job. It's not about the people that you are very close with, because those people don't tell you anything new. You already know that. It's those loose connections that you have that really matter. So Mark Granovetter, he did that as part of his studies. He was a student at university, turned his thesis into a book, influential book right now, called Getting a Job. And my hunch is if there is going to be a sociologist in the next few years to win the Nobel Prize, it might be Mark Granovetter. Anyway, so this is coming back to analytical sociology. What I think it's a convincing strategy for understanding the social world, and I hope to understand you. I hope to convince you. And there's a definition by also a colleague and friend, Gianluca Manzo, who says that analytical sociology is the sociological perspective that seeks to systematically formulate and empirically test micro-founded mechanism-based explanations of complex macro-level patterns and dynamics. You might wonder, what is that? Or is that even anything new? There's a lot of it in it. There's a lot of new stuff in it. And as it turns out, that's exactly what the second video is going to be. So in the second video that you guys have to watch, next week, not the first one, but the second one on what is analytical sociology, I really walk you through this definition. What are the key components to it? Systematically formulate, that's already something which is already different from what some sociologists do. Empirically test, that's already very different from what some sociologists do. Micro-founded, that's already something very different from what some people do who only look at the macro-level pattern. So it looks about individuals, what they do. Mechanism-based, thinking about how do we get to something from one to the other. Some people don't do that. Explanations, it's about explaining something, not just about describing something. And then of complex macro-level patterns, like of the thing that comes about at the broader macro-level level, like segregation, social inequality, social norms. These are the things that come about at the broader level by the individuals that act and interact with each other, and dynamics. But anyway, that's just a teaser. Like the second video is all about that definition. I really ripped that definition apart. It's not the required reading because I thought, let's mix it up. There's another paper by Koichnik and others that I have you guys read for the first week, but the Manzo paper, he does also some other weird things, to be honest, but this definition, I always liked it. Anyway, so I was mentioning that there are these videos. The first 2 are already online. Just earlier today, I thought, what the heck? Let's just release the other ones for the first stint as well. So watch those videos, do the readings before, and then watch those videos. And hey, even take some notes if you don't understand something, or if you have some questions, or something inspires you from it. That's kind of stuff we can work with. And in the live sessions, well, probably I prepare stuff, some group work. But if you have something that comes up, this is the place to discuss it. It's an open space, it's a free space. Okay, so I already talked a little bit about what I think what analytical sociology is. It starts from this whole point about how to make an explanation. Not everybody, I don't know, you don't need to have that, but I always thought this, because I know Peter Hestrom quite well, so this is where he comes from. He was interested in how do we make an explanation. And then you kind of have all these other things that follow. You have these tipping points, you have these forest fires, you have these dynamics that follow from it. And social life is inherently dynamic and interdependent. And it's kind of funny, because you guys don't see it, but a lot of sociologists, they treat society as if people are isolated. I think that doesn't make any sense. Or even most of the analysis that we do, when we do statistical analysis, we assume that observations are independent from each other. That's ridiculous. The whole point of sociology, society, is that things are affected by each other, isn't it? That's the difference. So, and that's sort of where I think it becomes fascinating to think about how social life is inherently dynamic. Or maybe that's why I also got interested in sociology. I grew up in a very small, tiny village in the south of Germany where everything depended on everything else. Everybody knew who you were, and I just had to get the fuck out of there. But in a way, I was sort of like, it formed me in some ways to be part of that, and that these interdependencies are definitely there. So if you want to do research, and sometimes people do that, and I deal with master students. I had master students working on research proposals, and I don't blame them because they don't know anything different in a way, but they kind of stop here. They just look at the world and describe it. It's okay. Everything starts with a good description of the world. If you don't do that, you don't have a starting point to move any further than that. So good description is important, and you can even look at how something changes. Like how do people evolve? What kind of jobs do people get? After they leave university, for example, or what is the difference in the gender wage gap? I don't know, the difference in pay between men and women. That's important stuff. We need to know that. But I think it falls a little short. Because we would want to explain things, right? Or explanation is sort of like the holy grail, because that is the way to change things, if you want to. If you only describe things, you can't change the world, because you don't know what is causing it. So causality is where it gets interesting. I don't know what causes what, because this is the point to change the world. But even that explanation, this is sort of like the Hempel-Oppenheim schema kind of thinking. It is unsatisfactory, because you don't really know how things are related with each other. How do you get from the one to the other? And you do need to know that, because otherwise you change things and it wasn't that what you thought. If you don't look at exactly what is the generative process to get from the one thing to the other. Because it could also be connected in a different way. No, it could be. It could be. And if you wouldn't have thought about that mechanism, you wouldn't have picked that up. And then very quickly you can kind of see how other things are related with each other, causing the one thing then the other. And then this is sort of like my spiel why I do social network analysis. We talk about social networks, and this is where I think is a good reason. Anyway, so it's often about the small and the big. I used to have a lecture that I always called the small and the big. I think we have one session on micro-macro links. So that's going to be an interesting one. Like what happens at the individual level, the people that do something, and what are the broader things that we do observe, social inequality, norms, segregation, and things like that. The small and the big stuff. And then you see something like that. Who has seen this kind of graph before? Just one? Where have you seen it?
I think it's the Coleman board.
Coleman board, where did you hear about it?
In the introduction lecture by Thomas Bohn.
Thomas Bohn? Nice, yeah. So he talked about that. Great, I'll tell him that you remembered. It's indeed called James Coleman's boat. James Coleman, funnily, he was the advisor of my advisor, Peter Hestrom. He was in Chicago. So Peter was there for a while. So he worked with James. I never met him, he died early. But this is sort of like this schema of trying to make an explanation between two macro level things. You have an idea about what could we fit in there? Max Weber, Protestant ethic, does that ring a bell? We have capitalism on the one side. we have Protestantism on the other side. Max Weber makes the connection in his book, famous book, The Protestant Ethic, that Protestantism emerged, that actually capitalism was on that side, Protestantism was on that side. He kind of makes the connection that capitalism emerged first in countries that were Protestant. And you see that's a description in a way. That's like a macro level connection. There are no individuals in there, it's like macro level phenomena. And then you can, and that's what James Gorman does in his Foundations of Social Theory in the first chapter as well, kind of apply that, Max Weber's Protestant ethic, to this schema. How Protestantism affects what individuals do, predestination theory in a way, like I've been chosen by God or not, you know, and that kind of determines my behavior. I need to save money because that's sort of like how I show to the world that I've been selected by God. And if everybody does that, boom, we live in a capitalist society. So that's sort of just an application, you know, like, but the more fascinating thing is that he makes the point, and again, not every sociologist does that, but I think how can you do sociology, how can you talk about the social world without the individuals in it? Some people treat, and this is where, I don't know, who knows about Niklas Luhmann general systems theory, the state theory? I'm pretty sure Thomas Grund talked about that as well. He's a bit of a disciple on that, I don't know. I always tease him on it. In that theory, Niklas Luhmann, it's almost like you don't need to have individuals to have a society. I think that's a little odd. You know, I think society only works with individuals in it. Of course, we are affected by society. We're all part of it. But at the same time, we create society. Maybe I'm an optimist. Maybe I think, you know, I can still choose how the world should look like by doing what I do, in a way. But so Coleman's boat is also called methodological individualism. Maybe you heard about that. Maybe Thomas Grund talked about that. Where it's really kind of thinking about, okay, individuals matter here. These are the actors that do something. They produce something. Anyway, so Coleman's boat is here. I have a little video. Maybe we kind of play that. It's also from Petri Ilikowski, who's also at the Institute of Sociology, about the Coleman boat. Let's watch this. We still have a bit of time.
Sociology is interested in how the social world works. Especially it is interested in social
Great Swedish accent.
States, communities, organizations and groups. They can be called macro-social reality. Individual human beings are the crucial component of these macro-scale social formations. Individuals and their interactions are the micro-social reality. Many of the central questions in sociology are related to relations between macro and micro. Social structures and institutions influence how individuals think and behave. However, nothing in the social world works without individual action. After all, the large-scale social formations are basically made of individuals and their social relationships. The society is not a mere sum of individuals. But how do macro facts depend on facts about individuals? This is what sociologists wish to understand. The Coleman diagram, or the Coleman boat, is an intellectual tool designed to help to think about these micro-macro relations. It was made famous by James Coleman, an influential American sociologist. This video will show you how the diagram works. Let us first take a look at the components. At the top we have the macro-scale social reality, and at the bottom there is an individual agent. The diagram is flexible. Depending on whether we are interested in groups, organizations or nations, we can choose that as the macro scale. The micro usually consists of individual persons, but in some applications the micro agents can also be families, firms or other organized groups. When using the diagram, the starting point is a relation between macro nodes A and D. The arrow 4 refers to a hypothetical causal relation between them. With the help of the diagram, we can study whether such causal relation makes sense. This is done by reconstructing the underlying causal mechanism. Understanding the mechanism is important for two reasons. First, the absence of a sensible and empirically supported mechanism raises serious doubt about the causal relation. Second, the mechanism provides explanatory understanding. Understanding how the cause produces the effect is the key for scientific phenomenon. Does universal basic income increase or decrease social inequality? This is a causal claim about macro social facts that can be used as an illustration. In the diagram, the introduction of the basic income by the government would be the node A, and the change in social inequality, the node D. The arrow 4 would represent the suggested causal relation. The relevant micro-agent would be individuals and families. The first step in the reconstruction of the mechanism is to figure out how the macro change influences an individual. This is the arrow 1. The macro change can transform the opportunities and incentives of the individual. It can also influence her beliefs or desires. For example, the introduction of the basic income could change individuals' level of income, her relation to welfare bureaucracy, and her beliefs about what is expected from her. It is also possible that the basic income changes the skills and abilities of the individual by influencing her educational choices. All these multiple influences are registered at the node B. The same macro change can influence different individuals differently. In the case of basic income, person's employment status, level of income, and age make important differences. For this reason, it's not sufficient to assume that any individual can represent the whole population. The causal influence of A on B is mediated by structural and institutional background conditions. The same policy change can have very different consequences in different institutional contexts. While these background conditions are not represented in the diagram, one of its purposes is to help social scientists to think about them. The next step is the arrow 2. It covers the theory of individual behavior. Do the changes in B have behavioral consequences, and if so, what are they? In the case of basic income, we can assume that changes in work-related incentives will affect behavior of some individuals, but will changes in social expectations also have behavioral consequences? Here, sociologists can be helped by psychological theories and findings, but quite often they have to rely on their own common sense. The behavioral assumptions matter, but they can be empirically tested. The node C leaves us with changes in individual behavior. To complete our sociological analysis, we have to get back to macro-social facts. This is covered by the arrow 3. According to Coleman, this micro-to-macro link has been neglected in sociological theory. It is still quite common to assume that the macro outcome is a mere aggregate or an average of the micro facts. One of the reasons for this is the interdependence of micro-actions. The behavior of an individual depends on how other individuals behave. This feedback loop can be represented by the arrow 5. In this loop, the original changes in behavior bring about new changes in B. If the labor market participation goes down, it becomes easier to find a new job and the salaries will go up. This will affect the behavior of the people still in the labor market. If part-time working becomes more common, more people would find it an acceptable alternative. However, if the number of people working goes down, that would also affect how much taxes the government can collect. This would affect the level of basic income the society can provide. These interdependencies make the social analysis both exciting and difficult. Only by understanding how they work, it is possible to make sense of the micro-macro link. What is the effect of basic income on social inequality will depend on these details. This video has shown how the Coleman diagram can be used to analyze complex social processes. The diagram is not a summary of any particular sociological theory. It is a device for making it easier to see what kind of theories we need.
Okay, so much about the Coleman board. You know, we'll get back into it. I think I might even have that video included in, is it the 3rd week, where we talk about the micro and macro link. So you might see it again. But nevertheless, I thought it's kind of interesting for you guys today here to get a bit of an understanding of it. Because this analytical sociology is sort of like almost like a meta way of thinking about stuff. You know, like how do things come about? And over the course of the semester, we talk about different components in this. You know? And one that always fascinates me, for example, is how we get from the macro to the micro. You know, how sort of constraints and opportunities really affect us here. And they really do. They really do. We are often embedded in society. We don't really know. Somebody, a wise person, once told me, has anybody come across the habitus of Pierre Bourdieu? Pierre Bourdieu? Probably. You have an idea? It's sort of like, you know, how one behaves oneself, but a person who explained it to me said the habitus is the unchosen principle in all your choices, like how you were raised. Like you didn't choose your habitus, you were brought up in it in a certain way. I was brought up in this tiny little village, a middle-class family background. It's my habitus, I couldn't change it. I don't know, and suddenly I find myself in the UK in very weird contexts. I was sitting there having dinner parties next to, I remember one day I was on this lawn in this college in Oxford celebrating that the guy just became a knight. And you wonder, what the hell are you doing? But where am I? But you can never let go of who you are. That's your habitus. It's your habitus, because that kind of then affects how you make choices. It affects about how you think. And it's the unchosen principle in all your choices. So the world kind of constrains us in many, many ways. In ways that you don't even see. And this is also where sociology is fascinating, to look at how the world constrains you that you don't even see. I did a bunch of work on how our embedment in social networks affects us. You don't see your networks. You don't have this eagle-eye view on who's connected to whom. You might have seen these graphs. I have them in my slide about what I do. These dots connected with the lines and so on. You don't have that. I often look at those kind of things because I study them. But they really matter. They really matter for how we see the world. Actually, as it turns out, it's just funny, we have another section towards the end called the friendship paradox, but it's situated in here, how we get from the macro to the micro. That turns out, for most of you guys, your friends tend to have more friends than you have. That's really weird, right? So if I take a random person in this room, and I take a random friend of that person, chances are that the second person has more friends than the first one. The random friend of a random person is not random anymore. Turns out it's even more bizarre. I did some work on Facebook. It turns out that the random friend of a random person is even more attractive than the first person. That's really weird. I love to say that in front of a lot of very established guys. I say, I'm sorry, guys. You just have fewer friends than your friends. Doesn't happen all the time, but on average it does. Why does it happen? Because some people have more connections. So those people show up in more relationships. So you have, basically, the saying, most roads lead to Rome. If there are more roads going to somebody, there's more opportunities to get to that. So if you only have 5 friends, only 5 people notice you as only having 5 friends. But if you have 1,000 friends, 1,000 people see you as having 1,000 friends. It's a phenomenon which is massive in social media. So on Twitter, for example, 98% of the people on Twitter have fewer followers than the people who they follow. I have a Twitter account. I don't really use it that much. I don't know, I should. But I have a measly number of followers. I don't really care. I don't kind of look at that in a way. But you see other people who have many more connections to it. And there you kind of see how that actually matters. How it actually really affects people. Teenagers who kind of think, I'm not that connected than others. Others have so many more friends. Others have so many more followers. Others have so many subscribers or whatnot. I don't, right? And actually it turns out most of the people have that experience. And there you kind of see how the embedment in social structures that you don't see really affects how you experience the world. That was like this arrow going down, or sometimes we call it constraints or opportunity structure. Opportunity structure is a term coined by Robert K. Merton, a guy we come across a few times. Our position in society gives us different opportunities because the structure, it's always like about this combination. And that's where sociology is fascinating. Between the structure, or the context and the individual in a way. You have both together. But actually, I'm telling you now, they both kind of really affect each other as well. And this is where I think it becomes fascinating. We also have this other arrow, and I think these 2 arrows are the points where sociology really makes the biggest contribution, because up there you have macroeconomists, down there you have psychologists. I think the sociology really adds value on these arrows going down and up. And when we go up, I kind of mentioned some examples to you already. The famous example that we'll talk about is really social segregation. That's a map of New York. Maybe you can tell, there's Manhattan up there, there's Brooklyn, there's Staten Island down here. And now you see, according to races, where people live. And actually, New York is incredibly segregated. Like this whole area where mostly black people live, whole areas where white people live. Up there in Harlem, there's like the Hispanics that live up there in the north. You have these areas, and the question is, how the hell do these things come about? Are we still racist? Are we still kind of this, I don't know, it's the 2000s, I don't know, this math. But as you will see, it's not always that simple that 1 + 1 = 2, because one person has an effect on somebody else, has an effect on somebody else, and so on. And this is where also very cool methods come into play. This is what you see in our computer simulation. We call that agent-based modeling. It's a very simple program. It's like you have like individuals represented here, like 2 colors. Think of it as race, think of it as gender or whatnot. They're located somewhere on this grid, and they just look, you give them this rule, look at the people around you. And a very simple rule. The very simple rule we can give them, move when less than 30% of your neighbors have your color. Right? So basically, I would be happy if 70% of my neighbors are different from me. I would be happy with that. But as soon as, let's say, I'm in the very small minority, if there's only 30% of my neighbors around me, I kind of move. That's a very simple rule. Very simple rule. Let's see what happens. And then we can actually play it out. This is how these things work. So you program a computer program. It's not fancy. It's very easy. You can even do that without any programming knowledge. And I'll show you what happens. That's sort of like people, those agents, they move around. You know, somebody's unhappy, move somewhere else. What happens? By that person moving, changes the location of where he left before, right? Because suddenly there's one red person less there, which then affects the situation for the other blue ones that were still there, or the other red ones that are there. And that person moves to another direction, where now suddenly that environment has been changed as well. Because now there's one more person in it. So you have tiny little changes, and those tiny little changes, they lead to a world that looks incredibly segregated. Most of the people are now surrounded by much more than 30% people being similar to themselves. We have a very segregated world, even though people didn't necessarily want to live in a segregated world. And this is where you see now where the implications are, which is why segregation often used as the prime example in analytical sociology about how you make that connection from the individual to the macro level phenomena, and how it is important, because you kind of get some outcomes at the macro level that maybe from an individual point of view you would not have thought of. If you kind of make that mistake, and some people make that mistake, they can't distinguish the levels. And then they think, okay, people are sort of have a certain preference on the individual level, 30% similar people that they want, and then they think, okay, we find 30% segregation in the world. It's not how it works. There's like these dynamics that unfold, these chain reactions, and then you have different outcomes. Anyway, we'll talk more about that. As it turns out, this is the video that I still need to produce, but it seems I still have an idea. Okay, so we have the macro boat, we go to that, and it's called James Coleman's boat, and what I often like to say, you got my spiel about social networks at the beginning. I always think in order to fully make sense of the Coleman boat, or to fully understand why it sails, we need to have social networks at the very center of it. I don't know, sometimes we also call it the Coleman fleet, and how one change affects something else, and then something else, we go up and down and so forth, and things affect each other, and networks are an important part of it. Anyway, there's a little bit of the stuff that we'll do. Right? Most of them have a look at the topics that we have. I think we have all of those. As you see, I don't have the reading on it, but Peter also made it very clear that in analytical sociology, it's all about clarity and precision. So this is where also I take my inspiration from. I kind of try to implement that in other contexts when I teach, when I do other things. It's about being clear and precise. It's not about mumbo jumbo. Because that's actually sad. Oftentimes, I see people who think that in order to be a good sociologist, they think they need to express themselves in a very complicated way, in a very fancy snob way. I'm always very skeptical about that. I can do that too, I don't know, no problem. But I can also show you when you're talking bullshit, in a way. So don't talk bullshit, but actually focus, be clear, and be precise. Oftentimes when you see something, when I read something that is very complicated, I'm very skeptical, because usually it masks other deficiencies, because it's so easy then to gloss over it when the argument is not clear. So be crystal clear, be very precise as much as you can. It's about social dynamics. We talked about that already. It's about the micro-macro link. I put the wisdom of the crowd in there. Has anybody ever heard about the wisdom of the crowd? Yeah, you heard about it? Yeah. You want to talk something about it? It's about how crowds can be collectively very clever. There's a famous book by James RWTH. He wrote a book. The original thing comes from a Nature article in 1908 from Francis Galton, who actually happened to be a cousin of Charles Darwin. Anyway, there's a video. We have a video about that. I think it's even released already. It's the 4th session that we have, the wisdom of the crowd, because I think it really shows you about how you can have ideas about individuals, but actually what you find out at the macro level about all of those together is very different. So this is sort of where I put it in there, but I also find it very, very cool. And the cow is there because in this original paper, this Nature paper by Francis Galton, he went out, God's like 110 years ago, to this stock and life fair, whatever you did in those days. And there was like this lottery or kind of like a quiz where people were asked to give their best guess about the weight of an ox, right? What's the weight of an ox? Oh, I don't know. I would have no idea. What do you think is the weight of that cow? Wild guess?
250 kilograms.
250 kilograms? Somebody, something else? Yeah?
500.
500? Well, it goes all sort of... Actually, I played this game with 500 undergraduate students in Ireland, the biggest lecture theatre in Dublin. Everybody gave their guess about the weight of the cow. And I took the average over all those 500 guesses. Do you know what? They were close by half a kilogram of the original weight of that cow. It was 625.5 or something, right? And this is sort of like half a kilogram. Students had their guess on that. Holy cow. As it turns out, you can play this with all sorts of other things. People did research on that, about what is the border length between Germany and Switzerland. What is, I don't know. You can, all sorts of games about that, where nobody really has the answer. And I show you how it actually works, or in the video you'll see how it works. But collectively, we still arrive at a result that is incredibly close to the real thing. It's like if you watch Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? Wer wird Millionär? I don't know if the show still runs. I don't know, maybe I'm getting old. And you see, they ask the audience, that joker. They're always incredibly good. They're oftentimes spot on, even though it's a very difficult question. I often find, well, that's a difficult question. I don't know. But the audience seems to get it right. How do they do it? Turns out in 98% of the time, the audience is right. The wisdom of the crowd is the answer for that. But watch the video, and then you decide if you want to come to the live session or not. Okay, so when the social influence, we talk about how is it? I don't know. Laughing is contagious. Did you know that? You can go out and laugh and on the main square, and people start laughing. People start giggling. You know why? It's fascinating. You know. There are other things that are socially contagious. Self-fulfilling prophecies. How things that are not true, but we believe in it, and because we believe in it, they actually become true. Fascinating stuff. Classic example is bank runs. I always apply that in my teaching. I trick myself into thinking that students are very clever. Because that actually makes me behave in a different way, which then actually makes students learn more. And at the end, they learn more. And I'm not the first one. There have been studies on that in the 1970s where they did that with high school kids, and suddenly people became much more intelligent. Success breeds success dynamics, we call it the Matthew effect, how having something leads to even more. I don't know why. Talk about broken windows. It's a fascinating topic. I actually have a couple of master students doing experiments with me on that. When we get to that point, I'll tell you more about it. But you might be part of a social experiment these days here on the campus that I run with the master students about how disorder spreads. How seeing something that is broken makes people break other things. Which is why the first thing I did when I came to the university here, I don't know, I had to renovate my chair. I asked the architects, paint the wall in the toilet over here. Because if you see an environment that looks fucked up, you treat it in a very different way than when you come to an environment that seems shiny. You respect it in a much different way. We talk about norms, we talk about tipping, we talk about segregation dynamics and networks, so all sorts of kind of things that I think are cool, I don't know. And as we go through the term, you guys will be exposed to that. Okay, so how do we continue? We're running out of time, but this is sort of how it goes. So for next week, you have the first reading. You read that all by yourself. You watch the videos by yourself. The second week, the same thing. Check out Moodle. Moodle is the place to go. You have everything there. You follow through. And in week 5, we come here together. You have read these kind of things. You watch the videos, and we do some group work. And also bring your ideas, when you didn't understand something, or when you have some questions, or if you're inspired by something. Bring that with you and be integrated in the group session, in the live session that we have. Okay, any questions? Yeah?
How heavy was the cow?
Sorry?
How heavy was the cow?
The cow was like 625 something. Yeah. I actually, I did the same experiment another time. I still have it in my office. Maybe I should bring it. I have a candy jar, right, with candies in it, and I pass it around and have people guess how much candy is in there. Their students were actually really spot on. Okay, see you guys in 4 weeks.